Hi, and welcome to Speech Codes Theory. Here's where we're going: the distinctiveness of speech codes, the multiplicity of speech codes, the substance of speech codes, the interpretation of speech codes, the site of speech codes, the force of speech codes in discussions, performance ethnography, and critique different speech codes in communication theory. Ethnography is the work of a naturalist who watches, listens, and records communicative conduct in its natural setting in order to understand a culture's concept web of meanings. A speech code is a historically enacted, socially constructed system of terms, meanings, premises, and rules pertaining to communicative conduct. Philipson studied speech codes in an ethnographic study in a community outside of Chicago, Illinois. He called it Teamsterville, and he also studied a community in Santa Barbara, California. Teamsterville and the Nasarima. The people of Teamsterville spoke English, but Philipson noted their pattern of speaking was radically different from the speech codes that he knew and heard practiced within his own family of origin, his friends at school, and across many talk shows on radio and TV. He defines the Nisarima culture by speech practices rather than geographical boundaries or ethnic background. The characteristic feature of the Nisarima speech code is a preoccupation with meta-communication, their talk about talk. The distinctiveness of speech codes. Proposition 1. Wherever there's a distinctive culture, there is to be found a distinctive speech code. Most Teamsterville conversations: where are you from and what's your nationality? This was related to whether a person is from the neighborhood. Speech among the Nisarima was a way to express uniqueness. In Teamsterville, children were to be seen, not heard. Proposition 2. In any given speech community, multiple speech codes are deployed. Observe when people are affected by other codes or employ dual codes. The Teamsterville men gauge relative worth by comparing their talk with residents of other neighborhoods. They stress the unified nature of their neighborhood speech patterns. Any attempt to improve speech is regarded as an act of disloyalty. Men define their way of speaking by contrasting it with their other codes. The awareness of another speech code is equally strong among the Nisarima. Proposition 3. A speech code involves a culturally distinctive psychology, sociology, and rhetoric. Speech code reveals structures of self, society, and strategic action. 3 functions of social life are reflected by speech code: psychology, sociology, and rhetoric. Rhetoric, in this case, includes both the discovery of truth and a persuasive appeal. Honor is a code that grants worth to an individual on the basis of an adherence to community values. Dignity is the worth an individual has by virtue of being a human being. Proposition 4. Significance of speaking depends on the speech codes used by speakers and listeners to create and interpret their communication. To understand the significance of a prominent speech practices within a culture, we must listen to the way people talk about it and respond to it. Distinguishing dimensions of speech. Close relationships contrast with distant affiliations. Open relationships are distinct from routine associations where people are stagnant, and supportive relationships stand in opposition to neutral interactions. Proposition 5. Terms, rules, and premises of the speech code are inextricably woven into speaking itself. Speech codes are on public display as people speak. They are open to scrutiny by anyone who takes a long look. Social dramas are public confrontations in which one party invokes a moral rule to challenge the conduct of another. The response from a person criticized offers a way of testing the legitimacy of rules of life embedded in a particular speech code. Totemizing rituals are a careful performance of structured sequence and actions that pays homage to a sacred object. The communication ritual follows a typical sequence. Initiation. A friend voices a need to work through an interpersonal problem. Acknowledgement. The confidant validates the importance of the issue by a willingness to sit down and talk. Negotiation. The friend self discloses, the confidant listens in an empathic and non judgmental way, and the friend in turn shows openness to feedback and change. And lastly, reaffirmation. Both the friend and the confidant try to minimize their different views, and they reiterate appreciation and commitment to one another. Proposition 6 is the artful use of a shared speech code is a sufficient condition for predicting, explaining, and controlling the form of discourse about the intelligibility, prudence, and morality of communication conduct. The knowledge of speech codes in a given situation helps an observer or participant predict or control what others will say and how they'll interpret what is said. Talk about clarity, appropriateness, and ethics of a person's communication is an important feature of everyday life. Performance ethnography is a research methodology committed to performance as both the subject and method of research, so that researchers' work is performance, and that reports of fieldwork should be actable. Principles of performance ethnography. Performance is both subject and method of performance ethnography. All social interactions are performance. Researchers are co-performers. The goal of performance ethnographies is to produce actable ethnographies. Performance ethnography almost always takes place among marginalized groups. Critique: different speech codes in communication theory. Most ethnographers applaud Phillipson's commitment to long-term participant observation and his perceptive interpretations. However, they are critical of efforts to generalize across cultures. Theorists who operate from a feminist, critical, or cultural studies perspective charge that he is silent and perhaps naive about power relationships. More scientific rigor is needed before generalizations are made. A few more data sets are needed. One could wish for a bit more scientific rigor before generalizations are made. One could also wish for a few more data sets than the two Phillipson presents. The Teamsterville and Nasarima codes are so dramatically opposed, it's tempting to divide the world into two cultural clusters. So to review our discussion of speech codes theory, we discussed the distinctiveness of speech codes, the multiplicity of speech codes, the substance of speech codes, the interpretation of speech codes, the site of speech codes, the force of speech codes in discussions, performance ethnography, and a critique, different speech codes in communication theory.